Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Blokes podcast. Ryan Hassan from the Centre for Healing here, joined by Nick Sutherland from Myndfit, the Caped Crusader of Macrae, the Batman of the Peninsula. Men want to be him, women want him. He is the Sultan of Steel, Nick Sutherland. Nick, how are you, mate?
Well, I like it when you call me Big Pa, for starters.
What did I call you?
It's that song. I like it when you call me Big Pa.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Another sip.
Well, I didn't know where to go with that intro. I'm not sure where I'm Batman and whether men want to be me and women want to be with me, but if you say so.
The Caped Crusader of Mindfulness.
I don't own a cape, but
maybe you should start wearing one.
Maybe I'm the hero we didn't know we needed, but the hero we deserved.
I just burnt my tongue on your cup of tea.
You did so.
You know when you do that? You know when you have a sip and you're a bit too anticipatory to and just jump into it and it burns the tongue.
As mustard.
And you know that's for the next 24 hours that burnt tongue's going to be known.
You dived in tongue first.
Yeah. I'd love to know what everyone thinks of our setup here at Myndfit HQ.
Didn't even take him a minute. Not even take him a minute. He's been setting this up and there's been numerous... Oh, yeah. He's loving this setup.
I got a new lens on the camera. I'm very, very excited.
I'm not taking anything away from him. It's amazing. I'll be excited to hear what...
Let's hope I pressed record properly.
Is this James Breeze inspired? Is this...
No. I actually was... I had this... I bought that new lens just recently because it's kind of the best one for that camera for video. Because normally when we do courses or recording, we're doing this kind of sitting at a desk about a metre away. Makes it look a bit more professional. But I actually, the reason why I was asking him about it, because I was sort of just working out my setup at that point as well.
Right.
So yeah, no, it's good now. I bought a thing. I got a bit too excited about buying gear, as I do, and I bought this weird setup thing so you could use that so you'd have a HD camera but you could actually make eye contact with people on Zoom, because on Zoom now, because we do Zoom therapy and Zoom calls, I suppose you don't notice when you do it a lot, but because you're looking at the screen but the camera on the laptop isn't there, so you're kind of looking at their chin, kind of thing. So I was trying to toy with how I could make it look exactly at their eyes through Zoom. But it's a bit too much work for what it's worth, to be honest.
Piercing gaze.
Yeah. I love... Do you love when you say one of those lines in a therapy session that it's out of love because you want them to see something, but I call it a stab, and literally you'll say it and then just stare into their eyes and leave that silence.
Yes, I do that with you are ignorant, you're incompetent, and you're mediocre.
And then just go silent.
Yep.
Yeah, I love it.
And you feel them they're just reacting. I was listening to our good friends, Mr. Das, the other day, first name Ram, and he was it's the episode where he's talking about being of service, and essentially he was just so he said this one line, and it was like doing the work burns. It's like whenever he's working with someone, he's just cauterizing all the impurities, and I was like, wow, that's exactly what I'm doing to my clients.
Yeah.
Sorry, clients.
Yeah, it's like you go through the fire and find out what you are not, because the truth will stay, but what you are not will fall away.
Oh, drink that in, listeners. But
Don't burn your tongue.
To be fair, I have given them fair warning by having the Myndfit motto being discomfort precedes success. So
they know.
They know they're going to be 75.
You can't complain. No. Look at the tagline on the door, for God's sake.
Exactly.
You knew what you were getting into.
You get what you're given in here.
I had one with someone. I've been doing a bit of work with people who are therapists or becoming therapists, more around how to build a business and get clients and that. And I had one beautiful lady that I was working with, and like a lot of people do, even not just in therapy, but in any business, was having trouble charging, what she's worth.
That old chestnut.
Yeah, that old chestnut. Tradies, anyone,
I'm a healer. I don't want to charge for my time.
No, it's not spiritual to make a lot of money. Yeah, it's better to be poor and resent everyone that has money. I had a friend, I'm going to digress. I had an old friend who I did a little bit of work with when I was just training to do what I do now. And we were going into some things, and she's like, look, I'm really open to spirituality, but she'd worked, there was a festival, I don't know if it still runs now, but called the Mind Body Spirit Festival. Runs, I think it's all around the country, but in Melbourne every year. And they'd set up stalls at an exhibition centre and everything. And so she was the main like sales manager for the Mind Body Spirit Festival, which attracts people who get stalls, or like, you know, spiritual healers, Reiki, selling crystals, all that kind of stuff. And she goes, I just got so turned off the spiritual scene because these people would be in front of everyone else preaching love and light and, you know, money's energy, blah, blah, blah. As soon as they asked for their bill, they turned into such a cunt. And they'd all be arguing after and everything when the lights are off. And that's the dark side of saying that money is not important. Anyway, working with this lady and having trouble charging. And then she was talking about, you know, how it's, you know, she felt bad and it's nice to not charge people as much and everything, and I can't remember what it was, but she was going down this rabbit hole, and I said, and she was giving free sessions away. And I said, I think you're trying to let yourself off the hook. And then just went silent, and then she's like, shit.
I love it when, because clients, what I'm peddling in here is rationality and logic. That's the wares that I'm selling, and my customers are at the opposite ends. They're usually highly irrational and illogical. So I was like, talking about it with a client, I was like, I just brushed a little bit of logic up against their irrationality, and it just chink and just broke, and it was beautiful. It was just a gentle. It was a metanoia.
A mini metanoia.
Mini metanoia. And we were just having such a laugh about it, and it's great when you're in a position when you hold that space for your clients where you can just laugh endlessly at their irrationality and the ego, and there's no ego laughing at the ego. It's just the awareness laughing at the ego, and it's probably my favourite part of my job is just laughing with my clients.
Yeah, I think it's really important for people to know, like, if you're listening and maybe you've been thinking about doing some of this deeper work on yourself, or you know someone who does, and it's like, it doesn't have to be all, you know, dark and, you know, pulling out the demons and it's all, you know, going to be painful. There's a little bit of that involved, but that was one of the things we would do as well at the centre, is just like make it most of the time like fun, laughing, joking at these little irrational children that we have inside of us that make these different, you know, funny
It's really
decisions.
not that heavy in here. Like, it's all light, and we don't talk about heavy stuff or anything. How the fear of death shaped human society.
Just some light reading before
light
bed.
reading. Where's the Aldi catalogue?
Aldi catalogue? How the fear of death shaped human society.
That's how I
Have you
roll.
read this yet?
That's it. No, I haven't. No, I just picked it up the other day.
Yeah, I'm interested. Because a book that I love is The Denial of Death by Ernst Becker.
Oh.
Which is a book many decades old, but it is quite brilliant in that, you know, he talks about, and a lot of it I agree with. It can be a bit nihilistic, but a lot of it I do agree with.
You only like it because you agree with it.
No, well, I agree with some and agree with not, and don't agree with some. But the parts that I agree with, I like more.
You know what I've been practicing lately? Suspending my beliefs. And just allowing things. I've just been practicing observing without having an opinion. And it's been wonderful. It's just been...
How's that gone?
How's it gone?
Yeah. Are you finding that difficult? Does the mind jump in and you get taken away?
Oh, it tries to. The ego tries to kidnap the Buddha nature. But the more you do it, like anything, the better you get at it. So.
Yeah. It's like there's a cut-off point where you're in a situation and it's like, this is, you know, crap, this is good, whatever. Then you just got to try and stop it at this is. And that's the non-judgment space. This is.
Yeah.
You know, I was listening to some Ajahn Shanti, who's a spiritual teacher lately, and he's talking about having this yes to life, and that a lot of people have a no, and there's like an aversion to the circumstances in their life. And when he says yes to life, he doesn't mean agreeing to everything. You can still disagree with something and take certain action, but you're saying yes to having that opportunity to disagree. So you basically, whatever life it puts in front of you, you're saying yes to, as opposed to having an aversion. That's where we get in
Like
trouble,
the Jim Carrey movie, Yes Man.
Kind of, but he had to say yes to literally everything.
That becomes a bit problematic. That's a bit out of balance.
Remember when he farts in the elevator? It was me!
Something else I've been playing around with. I read
Farting
ages
in an
ago.
elevator?
I had some part of me ducked into the Akashic Records this morning
Oh, right.
while I was driving.
Yeah.
And I just came into this awareness, this
Yeah.
understanding. It was beautiful. And I recalled a quote I'd read.
One second. Akashic Records, because people are like, what the fuck is he talking about?
Well, we've covered it in a
Well,
podcast.
we
with
might
Matt.
have new listeners. If that Finland
Go back to the
supporter
start.
base.
Fucking stop cheating. Go back to the start. 73, 4 or 5
What is it, you
hours
attack
ago.
your clients, you're attacking our listeners.
I'm not.
Discomfort precedes success. And so, think of it in Jungian terms as like the collective unconscious.
Think of it as in it's the soul's internet. It's the internet for the soul.
Okay.
Yeah. And so some part of my deep unconsciousness Googled how to really control yourself, I suppose. But I read this quote ages ago, and it was the master your hunger first, and everything else is easy, or something to paraphrase. It was along that line. So, because I guess our hunger is our primary instinct; it's to keep us surviving. And the realization was that's why yogis in that fast. It's not just because they want to lose a few pounds. It's because they're really trying to override that
survival drive.
Yeah, that human nature. So, yeah, I fasted today. I wouldn't call it fasted. I just chose not to eat, but I just observed that signal. And sometimes it was a very strong signal, and sometimes it was a very faint signal. I played around with it because the signal of I'm hungry and I'm thirsty are very similar. So I drank some water when I thought I was hungry. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it was just a fun day just to explore and experiment. I'm just going to keep doing it because I don't need to eat as much as I eat. I don't feel.
Yeah, it's like the quote you brought up I think a couple of times lately is just because I can do it doesn't mean I should. Yeah, I had this maybe a few years ago because I went through my 20s. I got right into the gym and that kind of bodybuilding, eating and lifting and everything where you eat every 2.5 to 3 hours.
Yeah.
I went through a period I was eating 7 times a day and I was just sick of food.
Wow.
And but it would be weird because as soon as it got to maybe 3 hours and 10 minutes, I'm I definitely need to eat.
I'm starving.
I need to eat.
I'm starving.
I've got enough food to probably last me for 3 weeks.
How funny is that expression? I'm starving.
I'm starving. Yeah.
Really? Are you?
No. And so that's what I played with that for a while. Yeah, because I did a few fasts, but also just intentionally noticing that it's am I just bored here? Is this an old conditioned response that I'm dealing with?
I took away a client's water bottle the other day because he kept mindlessly going to it, and it's his security blanket. So I've banned him from drinking water in sessions. I have. By the time I go back to it, you're sort of hanging out for it. Just, can I have my water, man?
It's like a pacifier or dummy you would have when you were a kid.
Yes.
Yeah, I heard a good analogy. We use phones like that.
Yeah.
It's like an adult pacifier. It's I
like it.
Yeah, I think it's a great analogy. It's
alcohol.
Alcohol. Yeah.
Pacifier.
Yeah. It's just I'm reaching for something that I believe will soothe me. It's like a baby with that little dummy in there, and that's what we do with the phone. It's I've had 2 minutes of no stimulation digitally. Let me reach for that phone because I might have an Instagram notification. It's like just a baby putting a dummy in its mouth.
Yeah, it's conditioning. I read a Bruce Lee quote. I had a funny ego moment the other day. I read this Bruce Lee quote and it said, in order to control myself, I must first accept myself. In order to control myself, I must first accept myself by going with and not against my nature.
Mm-hmm.
And my ego had a dummy spit because it was that's what I talk about. I can't believe Bruce Lee said it first. And I was like, hey, I don't think Bruce was the first to say it, dude. I'm pretty sure this has been around for thousands of years. So calm your farm, reel it in. I love calling my ego dude now. It's just dude. It literally is that housemate. Michael Singer talks about.
What does that mean, like, though?
Do you want me to break it down for you? The Bruce Lee quote.
Yeah, I do.
So, in order to control myself, he's talking about emotional intelligence. Self-managing, self-regulating is the second step. So, so in order to control myself, in order to be in a position where I can choose how I think and feel and speak and act and what I'm doing, I must first accept myself, because you were talking about aversions earlier, which is attachment is having an aversion and a desire simultaneously. I don't like this, but I do. I don't want this, but I do want that. And a lot of people, you spend 24/7 with yourself, so you are the biggest source of stimulus. What you say, what you think, what you feel, what you're doing. And if you continually get triggered at yourself, then you're going to be in a lot of suffering. So doing the work around, I love the quote that understanding is the cornerstone to love. And so when you can, remember Viktor Frankl said in between stimulus and response is a space, and blah blah blah. So if you can step into that space and observe yourself as the source of stimulus, and you can understand which nature is being employed here. Is this my personality? Is this my tendency? Is this my trait? Or is this my ego nature? Am I not getting what I want, or not being loved or liked, or the world's not perfect? Or is this my Buddha nature? Am I just being love at the moment? So you can sit there and observe yourself and see where you're coming at things from, and then go, that's where it is. That's what's going on here. And you embrace the totality of it all. So Ram Dass was talking about going beyond the polarity to just I am. You know, we do crappy things and we do amazing things and we just are. And that's essentially what you can do in that space, is just understand your nature. So you start deepening your self-love, your self-acceptance, and it's like coming home. You know, you come home, you're comfortable in your own skin, you go, you know what, I've got these things that I don't like about myself necessarily, but I love it all. It's all me, and I don't have any aversion to it. I'm not going to change because I don't like this. I'm just going to allow myself to organically grow, and that will change naturally. So, yeah, old mate Bruce was just, in order to control myself, I must first accept myself by going with my nature. Because if you start wrestling yourself, you're doing it out of force, not flow. So it's controlled, it's anxiety driven, it's not a healthy...
You're like white knuckling life.
Yeah, well, you're white knuckling yourself. That sounds a bit...
How do you know what I did last night?
I observed you by first accepting you and your nature. So I think it's a great quote, because it talks about so many different things. It's talking about emotional intelligence and self-love and non-attachment. You know, you can hear the lack of attachment in there.
Yeah, no, I do. I love that quote. I haven't heard that one of his. I think I was having you explain it, because it's the nature part. I was like, well, what does he mean by follow your true nature? Because yes, we do have these different natures, and you just explained that quite well. I think that's a big part of that's part of the work, is that people come in and go, this is me, this is all me, these are my problems, right?
No, so and that's the ego walking and going, this is how I identify.
Yeah, and then it's like, I think understanding, like you said, is having someone understand that there's these different parts that have different intentions, and based on those intentions they have different actions that they take.
Well, we call it the three natures. So it's on the top, it's the personality, the person's tendencies. So it's through DNA and genetics and conditioning and nature, nurture, all that stuff. But then we all have a human nature. I must be loved and liked, must get what I want, must be perfect. So that ego nature is always there within us until we transcend it. And then underneath it all is that just we are so naturally compassionate. We are just that Buddha nature, that pure nature. So if the if the ego nature can surrender to we are all ignorant, incompetent, and mediocre, if it can surrender to that and we can really lean into the discomfort of that, or push the ego into the discomfort of it, the ego doesn't like it, then it starts breaking it down, and it starts feeling more at peace when it creates these parameters of acceptance. So if we're observing our nature and we do something outside our parameters of acceptance, we're going to get triggered. And so if we can push our parameters right out and we accept that sometimes we say stupid shit. So
an explanation is when someone says something stupid and says, "Oh, I can't believe I said that. I shouldn't have said that."
Yeah.
So it's outside of what they accept.
Yeah. Oh, geez, I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
You know, it's a tiny little moment. They've just put themselves down. It's self-harming.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just at Aldi supermarket, and she said, "Oh, have a nice Christmas party." I went, "You too," and then I just burst into laughter because it was such an autopilot, mindless reaction.
Yeah.
Here's Mr. Mindfulness did something mindlessly. If I had these parameters of acceptance that I have to be mindful,
I have to be perfect.
Yeah, and then I'd be in all sorts of trouble, as I was once upon a time.
Yeah.
So those parameters have come right, and I do it with. I love the expression, "You can't give away that which you do not possess." So if I can't do that with myself, I can't do it with Emma or the kids or you or my clients or someone driving past. So I've really done a lot of work consciously on maintaining those really wide parameters.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to agree with everything in them, but I can accept that the people in the world are just doing their thing. There needs to be difference.
Mm-hmm.
Diversity? Diversity is super important.
Oh, of course it is. Yeah. No, it's I think it's interesting. It's like you can only laugh at the ego when you recognise when you're coming from ego, and before you start to do this work, it just all happens. There's no awareness of it kind of happening, and we're so identified with our ego, and our ego is just one state of consciousness.
Yeah.
It's just unfortunate that most human beings spend most of their time there when there's these other dimensions of consciousness. And whenever we strongly identify with something, especially an ego structure, then we need to defend it. And it's very rigid. You can feel the energy of that. Like, it's very rigid. I shouldn't have said that.
Well, should. So
it's like when someone says that something that happened, and even if it was something horrible, I say it shouldn't have happened to me. You're in resistance to what life
there's
presented.
no acceptance. So on the whiteboard when we're doing the work, we show a neurological pathway, and up the top is constructive, and down the bottom is destructive thinking. And judging, criticising, condemning is down the bottom. And part of destructive thinking is using the cognitive distortions, one of which is should, and another one's labelling. So, I shouldn't have done that. Geez, I'm an idiot. Instantly, you're looking at yourself through a distorted.
It's such
lens.
a common phrase, though, isn't it?
It is,
yeah.
But it's
the distortion.
It's self-harming.
Yeah.
You know, it's not loving the self. It's So instead of looking at yourself through that objective lens, which is a very clear filter, it's looking at it through these Coke bottle lenses. All of a sudden, you're seeing yourself as this undesirable, ignorant idiot who can't do anything, and people run the script. I had a client come in the other day. "Oh, Nick, I think I'm back in it. Oh, the black dog's around. Oh, this and that." Oh, you do a wonderful job at convincing yourself you're deeply unhappy. It's like, "Oh, what do you mean?" I said, "Yeah, it's brilliant. Your mind is so powerful. You've literally convinced yourself that you're unhappy."
You presented a wonderful case.
You did. Thank you for that display. Now, would you like to stop it? Yes, please. Okay, let's do that. But first, we need to laugh at it.
Yeah.
Because if you then go, "Oh, I'm such an idiot for convincing myself I'm unhappy," then you're just deepening that.
You're doing the same thing in a different way. Yeah. It's
But we do it. That's our human nature. That's our ego. Our ego is convincing itself that it is so pathetic and so it's just a dark, real destructive narrative.
Yeah, and a lot of times those narratives aren't even ours. They've just been passed down, and we just repeat them. I've had that many clients who, whether it's you or Nitty, I've had a lot of them who are like, they might have some slight inconvenience or something didn't quite go perfectly, and that narrative will be, I can't do anything right. massive generalization, right? Yeah. And then we start to investigate that. I can't do anything right, and it's what their dad told them when they got a C on their math, because you can't do anything right. So it's not even their words; they're just repeating.
All the parents would do. When the parent made a mistake, the parent would go, "Geez, I'm an idiot. I can't do anything right."
Yeah.
And the child is so vulnerable. It's looking to alpha male, female role model, going, "What do I do when I do something outside these parameters of acceptance?" Obviously, not asking themselves that, but on a deep level, it's happening. That's what I do. Right. I'll note to self, call yourself an idiot whenever you do something that's not quite correct.
Yeah.
It's like programming.
Yeah, and it can get just passed down from generation to generation.
Break the chain, man.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know if it was, I don't know who you say it might have been Tony Robbins. We had someone speaking to someone, and they was like, I'm not worthy. He goes, are you the first person that's had that thought? He's like, no. He's like, how many other humans have had that thought? He's like, possibly nearly every human that's ever lived. He goes, not yours then.
It's a client came in the other day with what did they say? Oh, that's right. He was embarrassed or ashamed about and got really anxious about sweating, and it turns out that he was unlovable because he sweated.
Right.
And I was like, oh, and I started pretending to get sad. And he's like, what are you sad about? I said, oh, well, I sweat, I guess that means I'm unlovable too. And he's like, why? I said, well, I don't know, I'm just using your logic, or not logic. I said, is that how it works? If I sweat, am I unlovable? Well, no. I said,
it's my particular sweat.
I said, did you feel that just rationality brush up against your irrational belief there? And he's like, yes.
And it's so interesting because a lot of these things like that, they also, maintaining that irrationality also compounds the problem.
Yeah.
So now that I made sweating a bad thing, I'm anxious about the sweating and I sweat more.
That was what we were pissing ourselves laughing
So
about.
so kind of it reinforces itself.
Well, that's why in that neurological pathway diagram, the bottom destructive one goes back around on itself, where the constructive one keeps moving forward.
Yeah. And that's why it's, especially early on, it's hard because you just have to laugh at yourself when you start trying to, you're thinking a new way, and then the mind trips up and goes into the old patterns, and then you laugh and you bring it back to the new one instead of you beating yourself up. Otherwise, you're just doing that destructive.
Well, that's where we give them the mental rep, and the first step of a mental rep is to catch yourself in it, to become aware of what you're doing, mindful of what you're saying as you're saying it, and the second step is to laugh. You got to laugh at how irrational your ego's being, and then you rewind, pull yourself back into that space, and just observe things objectively. The reality is, man has sweat. That's all it means. Stop applying meaning to it, and then change into that constructive thinking. I can sweat because I am a human. We have as many problems as we convince ourselves we have.
Yeah. I just imagine someone like going to an actual gym, like with weights, but doing mental reps, so like in the mirror with no weights, and they're just randomly laughing at themselves sporadically.
I can do it. I can do it. I can do it.
Caught myself again. Then you go to get a drink bottle and the towel. How was your workout? That was a good one.
Yeah.
Good PB.
Well, it's when trying to describe the work that I do, it's a lot of clients say I'm like a PT for the brain or whatever, and it really is. We're trying to strengthen the mind, and you start with the lowest reps. You start with the easy things, traffic or the weather or whatever, and then you work your way up to the more difficult things, yourself or your parents or your partners or work or whatever, and it's like not getting angry at the weather is like doing a 5 kilo rep, but not getting upset by your partner is like perhaps a 100 kilo rep, and you gotta work your way up to it. You can't just step in and deadlift the shit out of that.
Yeah, I talked about it as well with addictive behaviours. We spoke about the phone before, so I'll kind of get people just to notice early on. I'm like, just notice that, because I call it the compulsion to escape. This like pull, this pull that goes, this moment right now,
I must leave it.
I need to get out.
Check, please.
Where's the door?
Yeah.
Where's the door to this? Unfortunately, you go out the door with yourself.
Where's the door to an alternate reality? There it is.
Yeah, let's look
Swipe
at somebody else's life and their filters and their highlight reel and make myself feel worse. It's better than being present. So I always get them to notice. I'm like, especially early on, it's like if you have a desperate compulsion to go and score heroin, then you're trying to fight a big deadlift there, right? Why are you making me look at your phone? This is just so ironic.
I'm not making you do anything.
When a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure. True. True.
So if you're sitting there bored shitless and because you're not deeply connected or involved in the experience you're having at the time, you're going to just look for something to make you feel better.
Yeah, and then the problem with that is the pursuit of pleasure.
Pleasure.
The pursuit of pleasure makes you not talk properly. The pursuit of pleasure will eventually lead to more pain.
As I say to clients, if your ego got what it wanted, right? If your partner suddenly started doing this, or the dog did that, or your boss did this, or you got every green light, your ego would be temporarily satisfied. It would be sated. Yeah, it would be, that's better. Yeah, give it 2 or 3 days, it's going to become deeply unsatisfied again, and whatever happened isn't going to be enough, and it's going to go looking for more. So it's like that black hole where you just can't satisfy the ego.
I was at a red light the other day, and I think I was running late to this thing as well, and got a red light, and it was great. Instead of sitting there looking at the other lights, when's it going to go green? I turned around, the people in the car next to me had some song on, and they were dancing, they were going off, and they looked over at me and put their window down, and then I started dancing as well, and we're like, woo! And then they took off, and I went off, and I'm like, that was such a good moment. But they're the moments that we miss when we're not present, and we're always trying to get to the next thing, which is what the ego does. The ego's always like, what's next and what's more?
Well, that's when I came back with, live life as slowly as possible, try and be as still as I can. That's exactly what it means. It's observe the ego, but the more you observe it, the less the ego's involved, so the weaker it gets. And so it's much easier to stay in your Buddha nature, as we call it. And the ego's still going to have a Red Bull and tackle the shit out of it's still going to take over and kidnap you. But it's much easier just to see what you're doing, and when you don't have to rush. Like there's so much happening at the moment. We've got M's mum's got some health issues. We've backyard landscaping. We've had to get the van ready to go up to the property up in Queensland. Clients are crazy busy, appointments. There is so much going on, and in all of that, I've really maintained this sense of it's all there, but I'm still here.
Because it's a falsity to think, and I know I've done this a million times, it's like when things are happening, you're like, well, as soon as A, B and C are kind of sorted out, then I'll be able to take a deep breath. But then the problem is when A, B and C sort themselves out, you've got another A, B and C, D and F. and that never kind of ends.
Yeah.
And it's like when you spoke about problems, we're addicted to problems as human beings. We just create them. So it's like we have these problems and we finally solve them, or they disappear, but then we'll just create new problems because there's an insatiable need for problems or drama all the time.
I said to a client the other day, what would happen if you stopped having these problems? And I want you to really think about it, friend. What would happen if you stopped being in conflict within yourself? What would happen if you stopped having something to complain about, or you stopped having, it's not going my way? What would happen if you just let go and just allowed the world to be, allowed the universe to be, allowed the people in your life to just be? What would happen? I reckon I'd be bored, is what they said. And I was like, I'd call it peace, but you'd call it bored. And seriously, so they get addicted to the conflict. They get the ego keeps getting addicted to the conflict.
But also our physiology gets addicted to that as well. Our physiology gets addicted to cortisol, adrenaline. Our nervous system gets addicted to being in a sympathetic state, and so we have to actually go through a withdrawal process, like we're coming off a drug.
Yep.
Because when it's coming off, instead of a drug that we would take externally, it's like a withdrawal from heroin or ice or whatever, we're withdrawing from the drugs that we're producing internally, which are just as powerful.
And so I say, you don't have anxiety. Oh, this is great for if you're listening and you're new to this. You don't have anxiety and you don't have depression. How fun is that? 1 in 4 people have anxiety and depression. Well, I'd love to see 1 in 4 people have happiness. Like, why don't they do those stats? Because it's so irrational. Every single human has a brain that can produce a state of anxiety.
Well, yeah, it's like
our feelings are our chemicals.
1 in 4 people have guilt. 1 in 4 people have anger.
Anyway, I don't have an attachment to it being different. It just is. And so the brain is producing...
1 in 2 people is frustrated in this room right now.
The brain's producing chemicals, and that chemical is creating a state. So just as the brain gets trained to create a state of anxiety or a state of depression or a state of anger or a state of frustration or a state of stress, when you do the work, it suddenly starts creating a state of equanimity, a state of calmness, a state of peace, a state of love, a state of stillness. And you don't get bored in those states just because there's a lack of conflict or a lack of heightened chemicals. You're having a very deep experience, and it's different, but it's I wouldn't even say it's pleasurable, because it's not associated with the pleasure receptors. I think it's happening on a different level.
It's how would you describe it? It's more of an intrinsic pleasure as opposed to an external one.
Well, we talk about happiness, the 2 types of happiness. There's getting what I want happy, or there's being inherently happy. And I'll be happy when A, B, and C is ticked or whatever. Yes. But that's a great outsourcing. Have the key to my happiness, everyone. Where that just being able to observe people and stay in that love, especially when someone or something is happening outside of your values or your beliefs or your morals or your ethics or whatever, and you don't apply a meaning to it, you don't form a belief in that moment that this person is an idiot or that that's wrong or whatever. When you stay in that objective space and you stay unsettled, that's a very it's just peace. It's just a deep sense of peace, and it's just like it's quite it is different. So the heightened roller coaster, you can get addicted to going to the rides and the wee adrenaline wee. But you could also walk around and just observe the people having their experiences on it and just have this wonderful sense of love. Yeah,
it's much more complicated than this, but one thing that Dr. Andrew Huberman talks about, he's a neuroscientist. He's got a good podcast, the Huberman Lab, or if you like geeking out on that kind of stuff. But he's talking about dopamine and serotonin. And so dopamine, he didn't write the book, but someone else, he called The Molecule of More, which is a wonderful title.
It's the ego.
So it's like something that produced dopamine, then the dopamine, the brain goes, oh, that was good,
Instant gratification.
So we keep chasing externally. Whereas serotonin is this deep feeling of everything that I have is okay. Everything that I have is great. And that's like, walking around the theme park, and instead of going, I need to go on every ride 100 times, it's more like, wow, look at all this. Look at all these people and there's rides. It's like this internal thing.
I did a bit of an ego death with a client the other day. Just is.
I'm imagining like an exorcism.
Yeah, right? Well, I just got the hot poker and just burnt it out. And we're doing a guided meditation, and I did you can't see it all, have it all, know it all, be it all, and do it all. The five whatevers. Can't see it all, be it all, do it all, know it all, have it all. And they had to sit there in that discomfort and really keep surrendering to that. And it was very challenging because they want to go everywhere and see everything and finish everything at work. And I can't leave work till I've done all the emails. And it's just this, what I'm really saying is you're ignorant, incompetent, mediocre to some degree, and that's okay. And it just stings the ego so hard.
I do that with clients with the uncertainty. So we'll hit a point where they're like, they'll need to know something. And I know that even if they find that out, they'll need something else to know. But it's, I need to know this from someone else.
Yeah.
And then we sit with, I'm like, okay, let's sit with this. You're never going to know that.
It's like holding up a cross to a possessed.
Because one of the functions of the brain is to understand. Our brain is like insatiable in its quest, and it's great because we've been able to fucking go to the moon and do.
Shout out to all our tin hat listeners.
I don't mind a tinfoil hat every now and then.
Yeah.
Although I was listening to Neil deGrasse Tyson once, and he was talking about what would be involved to fake the moon landing, and he goes, it would actually be easier just to go to the moon than fake it.
Shout out to to the global headquarters of the Flat Earth Society.
And what was I saying? Yeah, so the mind, it's insatiable in its need to understand, and it's been able to produce these, incredible feats of science and technology. But it also gets us into so much strife because there's a myriad of billions of things that we'll never know. And the mind won't like that. And it's like, how comfortable can you be with your mind not kicking up a stink around not being able to know that? And it's a human need for certainty, right, that we have.
Well, that's why I say one of the most powerful sentences we can use is, I don't know.
Yeah.
Because it's the ego surrendering that need to be right or to know everything, or it's just I don't know. Try that out, listeners. When you're someone, you can feel it brush up against the ego, and the ego's like, what the hell was that?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I don't know.
It's like kryptonite.
It is. Well, it's that it's that thirst. It's insatiable, that thirst again. You can't quench the thirst. And I talk to clients about getting stuck in the why. Why did this happen? Why did it happen? Why? It's like, who cares? Yeah. Honestly, how are you going to move forward? How are you going to evolve? How are you going to surrender? How are you going to let go? And it's getting stuck in the why. It just really just deepens it. It's like quicksand. Struggling in quicksand is getting stuck in the why.
And something that we can do, like, you can also use this for your benefit, listeners and watchers, like, because the reason why the mind kicks up such a stink and doesn't shut the hell up is because the beliefs that Nick talks about. At an early age, we say to the mind, all right, I want everybody to like me. I want no one to dislike me. I always want to be happy and I want to do everything perfectly. And the mind goes, all right, I'll try. And so the mind does not shut the fuck up trying to make that a reality because it's an impossible task.
I want the latest bike. I want the latest this. I need that. I need to keep up with the Joneses from an early age. Yeah. Davey has this. I need it too.
I got that bike. Now I'm bored of that bike and I need the new bike.
Just dump.
So what a lot of people do, very quite successful people, is they try and use this to an advantage because the brain will try and answer any question that you pose to it. So it's like, let's try and pose some better questions. So one thing is great. You can even, plant some questions in the subconscious at night time. If there's some questions that would really benefit your life, a lot of people that I know, and I've actually recommended this to people, is to write those down on a bit of paper before bed, then just push them to the side. And you'll be surprised whether you wake up in the morning or it's in the shower the next day or something. These questions that you were having trouble with, answers will start to present themselves. So we can use this mechanism of the mind in a more positive manner.
Because remember, when you're asleep, the part of you is going to go to the Akashic records, and you can just jump on the soul Google and go,
I'll be like, don't get distracted with the porn section, actually look for what I was asked you to find. You wake up in the morning, you're like, where's the answers? Sorry. I went down a wormhole.
Boobs.
Might be the answer.
Yep. Boobs is always the answer. What did you want to talk about today, by the way?
Not what we've been talking about.
Okay.
I was going to talk about how when we run into some physical issues, I've had a few physical issues the last month or two.
But Des and Troy are deflating?
A little bit.
Oh dear.
Yeah, well, I've got a back problem at the minute, which has flared up twice. I had a flare up with my Crohn's disease.
The semantics you just use. I have a back problem.
Well, right now it's active.
Yeah, so change the narrative. Seriously.
Yeah. No, right now I'm actively experiencing back pain.
Is it pain or a sensation?
It's pain. It's not suffering. It's pain. Mm-hmm. But it's also a sensation. So then it's interesting to think about how these issues, especially if someone has, chronic physical things, how that has a flow and effect to mental health. Because I know, a few days ago when the pain was really bad and I could not get away from it, all of a sudden you start to look at life, your lens becomes a little bit different, and I'm mindful of it now, but it does become a little bit different. All of a sudden it'll be a little bit shorter, more distorted.
Distorted lens?
Distorted lens, yeah.
You're taking a bit personally, or there's a bit of labelling, a bit of blaming, a bit of just a hint of bending out of shape.
Just everything, even the being present or aware or putting into practice things becomes a little bit more difficult when you have your consciousness tied up in this other part.
Well, so adapt or die is the old adage. So
die.
When how the fear of death shaped human society.
You're not touching subconsciously.
I know you are. Well, it's like when your finances change, you got to live within your means.
What about with you're obviously into your running and everything and fitness, and then you blew out your knee and everything.
Yeah, and so I didn't surrender. I didn't adapt. I stayed very rigid and
white-knuckled it.
White-knuckled the rigidity.
Far too much.
And so I got very distorted and started experiencing mental health issues, which dived down into mental illness, and so that's on a physical level. If you're earning $1,000 a week and all of a sudden something happens and you're only earning $500 a week, you've got to adapt. You've got to keep living within your means. You've got to surrender. You've got to let go of some things. You've got to change, because the law of nature that we all as humans need to live within is that everything is impermanent. It's all temporary. So the state of our back is temporary. It's going to change and fluctuate. And if you don't allow it to move up and down the whole spectrum, if you get distorted, if you have an aversion to it being not functional and a desire for it to be always functional, your mental health will be affected. So,
but it's understandable that some people, maybe they've had chronic pain for years and that kind of thing.
Well, I've got a client who's paraplegic. She had a spinal cord injury after falling off a horse, and we're doing a lot of work around surrendering, create a new normal. What can this body do now? Not what can't it do? It's destructive thinking. So that's why when we do the first fundamental, the first one is priorities, and you have to be the priority in your mental, physical and nutritional health, the three circles, and they're all linked because they all do affect each other so deeply. So if you have if your physical health is impacted, you've got to step into the second fundamental, which is your basic human needs, and start doing what is required to feel empowered, to feel a sense of belonging, to have fun, to feel like I'm going to be okay, whatever happens. So this is where you step in and take responsibility for your happiness.
Yeah.
Instead of
I like that. It's a simple reframe. Like what can this body do instead of what can't it do? Because that's like we spoke about human instinct and how it naturally goes places, and that's naturally where it goes, isn't it? Look at the things that now, based on what's going on, I can't do.
Well, negativity travels faster than positivity, I think, and so it's our minds mindlessly fall into that destructive thinking. So that's
why is that?
The ego. So human nature.
Is that because that plays into that survival drive?
No, it's just I'm not perfect anymore because my back isn't functioning.
But what about this? What about the survival of our species was really based on scanning our environment for what's wrong as opposed to what's right?
There's many elements and layers to it, I imagine. That's would definitely be contributing, I feel.
Sort of negativity bias, isn't it?
Well, the anxiety is like a bodyguard, and it's a survival mechanism to keep us alive. But
it's not great for happiness and peace, though,
it's not. No, especially in a day and age where we're not really under threat. Like you're going for a job interview. I'm so anxious. Nothing in there is trying to kill you.
Yeah.
Reality is a person is going to talk to other people. You do it all day. This is no different. The only difference is the attachment to I must be loved and liked, I must get what I want, and this must go perfectly. So it always comes back to those three.
Yeah. But it's kind of as well like, what's the most threatening thing that's going to happen to a human today? And for that human, it might be a job interview. For someone 500 years ago, it might have been going out to hunt a wild animal that could have eaten me.
Saber-toothed tiger versus job interview.
Yeah. Both producing similar amounts of anxiety.
This is why we need to do the work to evolve out of that now. We're at that age.
Grow up, everyone.
So for you, I would...
I'm talking to myself as well.
Yeah, it's good, because I would look at what are your attachments. If your mental health is being affected...
Grow up, everyone. No. So my mental health, I'm doing quite well.
Okay.
But it brought up, just other people, but also other times in my life. Like my Crohn's disease in my 20s.
My Crohn's disease.
Mentally... it beat the shit out of me mentally. It really did.
It did not. That's such terrible language.
No, but it did.
It did not. Your attachments beat the shit out of you.
Yeah, but I didn't know that back then.
No, but you've got to use that version of me. You've got to create that separation.
All right. There's semantics.
No, semantics is important.
Like I've got separation there.
Don't brush semantics away.
But I've got separation there. I'm not still back there.
My Crohn's disease beat the shit out of me.
Because I identified with having it back then, and I really did beat the shit out of myself.
Okay, but you've got to use appropriate language for the here and now. Be here now. Look at the other book next to you. Be here now, Ryan.
These books are really talking to me today.
They are. It's like the angel and the devil on your shoulders.
Anywho, I experienced struggle with that period of my life, with what I was going through, because it distorted my view of reality more than it was already distorted.
Your attachments created these distortions, and so you started looking at your experience through these heavily distorted lenses.
The attachment was really, the theme was, this shouldn't be happening, why is this happening to me?
So that's is a distortion, happening to me is taking it personally.
Mm-hmm.
What else was going on? You're labelling, this is fucked.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was also...
I can't believe this is happening.
And then I was also, I wouldn't, because, Crohn's digestive stuff's not really fun to talk about, so I would really internalise it, wouldn't want to speak about it.
Because that's
if my ex-wife brought it up out of concern and everything, or she brought it up with someone else, I'd be like, don't talk about it.
Shut up, woman.
I was still a people pleaser, so I wouldn't talk that way.
Okay.
But I'd passive aggressively say that.
Don't you come to me with that. Don't you come here.
Do you mind never saying that again? And so, it got internalised as well. And, I think I brought this up on the show before, but a big turning point for me was opening up about it, and then also I wrote a list of the benefits, so but balancing out a very, very, very heavily distorted perception on what was happening.
Balance is my go-to word, I think.
It's a ripper, isn't it?
Well, it's so important. Everything's that double-edged sword. Everything has a pro and a con to it. Our minds are very powerful. We'll convince ourselves of this illusion that is being created. A lot of the time it's not actually happening. And so for a person who's in physical distress or discomfort, it's imperative that they learn the tools to not create what we call unnecessary suffering, which is what you're in.
That's the point. That's the point I think we're moving towards.
You're in probably 25% necessary suffering, 75% unnecessary suffering.
That's probably generous.
Okay, great. I'm a generous guy. And that's all I'm trying to do is.
But it's like the client you're talking about who made the wonderful case for how depressed they are and everything. It's like we get a little bit lost in our story too, don't we? All of a sudden for me it's like, oh, now I've been diagnosed with this disease and I've had this surgery and I'm struggling with it, and then all of a sudden this story gathers momentum.
But you can hear the ego identify. The ego is attached to the body. So the ego identifies as this, I have this disease. No, you don't. You are not that. You are just the conscious awareness of everything, remember? You don't have any of that. You are just observing this incarnation, this physical part of you is dysfunctional to some degree, or not operating optimally. It's if you can start, and then I'm talking to everybody and myself included, we really need to be mindful of the semantics, the words that we are using, because that paints that picture. And so the words are super powerful.
Of course.
That's all I have to say on that.
Yeah. So I think the key takeaway there is just be aware of the semantics, but also be aware of, how much of what I'm going through am I producing this unnecessary suffering based on my ego being attached to whatever's going on at the minute.
You become what you tell yourself you are. So if you're, this is fucked, this is the worst, this is terrible, this is always gonna happen, you're creating that. You are the ultimate creator. So a person in that position with the tools and with the emotional intelligence to self-manage, Bruce Lee can just control himself by first accepting his nature and going with it, and then learning what to do with that nature and how powerful it can be. So when we train the mind, and so two people can be having the same physical experience, both have Crohn's disease, for instance, and one with a really constructive, healthy mindset with the vocabulary and the tools and the emotional intelligence and everything, is going to have a vastly different experience to an untrained mind.
Yeah. So you're actually making me remember, after I went through and I was starting to do this work, I did the list and, things were getting better, and I was actually in a Facebook group of Crohn's and Colitis Australia or some shit. And anyway, I had to leave the group because once I became aware of how I related to, this disease vastly affected the symptoms the disease was presenting to me, then all of a sudden I would go to this group and I'm like, oh my God, like everybody in here is completely a victim of this diagnosis, and not many of them, if you even presented, some ideas in that, they would kind of shut it down. They're like, no, don't you know that we have this forever?
Identify as this. Don't take it away from me.
Don't take it away from me. Don't take it away from me.
But you can be healthy. No, I don't want to be healthy.
No.
I want to stay in suffering. This is the trip, man. It's people just want to stay in their suffering. They're getting something out of that.
Correct. Yeah. So secondary gains. There's some gain there that they're getting out of it.
And not like Des and Troy gains.
No, not those sweet gains. that I'm losing because I haven't been to the gym in a while. But that's okay.
Everything ebbs and flows.
Exactly. I'm enjoying having a bit more spare time.
Wonderful.
To run around with the young T-train.
So if you are constructive in your thinking, you will go, what can I do with this time now? You will just simply come to an acceptance that, all right, I can't take this body and train at the gym anymore.
I can come and do a podcast in person with Nico.
Drink that in. Drink that in. Don't burn your tongue.
All right, let's wrap it up.
All right, like a Christmas present.
Absolutely.
This is probably our Christmas podcast.
It'll come out around Christmas time, I'd say, yeah.
But we're recording it prior to Christmas. So
yes.
I'll be in Queensland at Acacia next week.
At your new property, mate?
Yes.
That's exciting.
Finally get to go and see it.
Yeah.
Totally exciting. So, just spending...
Do they have an airport in Agnes?
No.
Where do you fly into?
Flying to Maroochydore.
Maroochydore.
It's a great word to say.
It's a great, isn't it?
Maroochydore. So we sent the van and a disco up there, a disco stew. And so disco will be waiting for us at our friend's house. The van will keep going up to Agnes and we'll meet it up there and then just start exploring the property.
Yeah.
Apparently they've had like 900 mil of rain. So,
Queensland has been...
the dams are full, the river's full, everything's full, the tanks are full.
Yeah.
So and it's all green and lush.
Beautiful.
But I want to get on the mower and ride a mower.
With property,
Yep.
you need like a special hat.
I've got a special hat.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Emma hates it.
Yeah. So you like it even more?
It's only my Queensland hat, apparently. I think I look good in it. My ego thinks it looks good in it.
Yeah. That's great. That's exciting, mate. Very, very exciting.
Yep. And then birthday, then New Year's, then back into it next year. So,
Excellent.
yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you everyone for tuning in. If there's any topics that you would like us to talk about on the show, just let us know. Hit us up on Instagram or comment on the YouTube video or whatever it is.
I promise we will do no research into the topic that you ask us.
We'll read the words though,
Yeah.
and then talk about it.
As best we can.
Awesome. All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in.
Peace.
See you all next week.